Now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. Don't forget, Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, which tells you about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy medicine sessions, and psychic readings. A great gift to get for a family member, plus all the books and CDs that I've written. They're also available on that site, as well as Amazon.com. I don't know. I'm excited about our next guest, so I'm not even going to make any more announcements. I'm just going to get right into it. So in this hour, we're going to be speaking with Don Oscar Miro-Quesada about ancestral healing traditions of Peru. So Don Oscar is the originator of the Pachucati Mesa tradition of cross-cultural shamanism and visionary founder of the Heart of the Healer Alliance. He is also the UN observer to the Permanent Forum of Indigenous Issues and the OAX Fellow in Ethnopsychology. A respected Oscar... Too many hard words. Kamasqa, curandero, and something adept from Peru. See, I just work my way around it. I just say, yep, I'm just going to skip that word. Anyway, so, hi, Oscar. How are you?
Salutations, my good sister. You're doing a formidable job of pronouncing these very tricky terms that derive from the ancestral dialect known as Quechua, or Runasimi from the Andes. Yet suffice to say that you may just call me Oscar and know that I'm a friendly holographic projection ready to be of service to your listening audience.
Well, okay. I like that. So I have a lot of questions for you, but, I haven't had you on the show before, and I always like to get a little bit of information. What's your story? How did you end up down this path of healing and working and becoming a curandero?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's pretty much articulated in the narrative that I've offered through my book, Lessons in Courage, co-authored with the famed anthropologist Bonnie Glass Coffin from Utah State University. And in Lessons in Courage, Peruvian Shamanic Wisdom for Everyday Life, which you can purchase on Amazon.com.
You're good.
There is, a detailed rendition of how very serendipitous events in my life led me to embrace the shamanic path of my ancestral peoples of Peru. When I was very, very young, I had a near-death experience through electrocution when I was 1.5 years old. And that obviously wired some neurogenetic conditions within me that made me very sensitive to the unseen dimensions within life, and also very aware of the sanctity of the living soul within the world. So through dreams and intuitions and various nudges that some of them may seem incredulous to many people that are still fixated on the three-dimensional view of reality, I found myself gradually, progressively becoming more and more serious about apprenticing in these healing arts, and found my way in my teens to the home of Don Celso Rojas Palomino, from a place, a small village, a sugarcane growing region in the northern coast of Peru called Salas. And when I was just about to turn 18 years old, that's when I began my formal apprenticeship in the healing arts known as kamasqa, curanderismo, or the creative approach to healing. service in the world. I also was blessed with the opportunity to live in very remote rural areas of Peru. My father, working for the National Institutes of Public Health, was stationed in extremely remote areas. I spent from age 2 years old to 4 years old living in the bush and in direct, intimate contact with indigenous populations and native peoples that informed my early formative years with a passion and respect for these earth-centered ways. Hence, I had also that template, that background that helped me quite a bit be able to embrace this more mythic and soul-infused way of living. I trust that answers your question, Dr. Rita.
Yeah. Your story, there are no coincidences, and all the things that happen in our lives, especially the formative part of our lives, just kind of push us in a direction of, we can, as I like to say, we can choose to listen or we can choose to get our butt kicked, because there usually isn't a choice. You're either going to learn the lesson because you surrender and do it, or you can resist. And the universe has a way of asking you nicely, and then basically throwing you into the middle of it, and you're not prepared. So, I mean, has that been all right, that's been my experience, but it kind of sounds like that's kind of been your experience too.
Yes, and it's not uncommon among two-leggeds or, us humans to want to be in control and, fight with tooth and nail to be the primary agents or the ones responsible for determining the outcome of our lives. And that really goes totally against the way the universe unfolds and evolves. For it's a process, and when that process is hindered, and we put blocks to its agenda, often it becomes a very painful experience in life. And I found we have this saying in Peru that goes "a la tercera va la vencida," meaning at the third attempt is the defeat. So sometimes we have to be hit on the head, like you rightfully said, 3 times before we fall to our knees with great humility and say, I surrender to the will and to the way of a wisdom much greater than myself that is orchestrating these crazy things happening to me. Just do what you may with me. And at that point, a breakthrough occurs. It's a form of rite of passage, a surrender, and great peace and wholeness can be reclaimed as one's birthright rather than struggle, pain, and resistance.
I mean, and I'm just, again, going to speak from my own experience. I mean, but I do believe, I still argue with spirit. They're like, hey, this is what you need to be doing. And I'll argue with them. I mean, then I do it. I don't argue so that I don't do it. I just argue like, well, I'm more whine. I mean, do you find that you just respond? Do you find that you still hit that wall? I'm just going to shut up.
Well, I can only speak from my own experience, even though I've observed many people doing exactly what you're sharing, which is trying to barter, trying to negotiate, trying to strike a deal with creator, creatrix, with the great originating mystery, the ultimate ground of being, whatever is behind the nudges that are important for the progression of our soul. It's very easy to resist them because it takes work, and it also requires assuming a responsibility that is more just for one's personal salvation, but that involves truly service to the great web of life. And it sometimes requires deep sacrifice and hardship. And it's an initiation and a rite of passage. And all changes that are transformative are going to require some stretching of the envelope, some pushing beyond one's preconditioned limits. So yes, I'd say that in my own experience early on, I resisted the call, the vocation, the vocatio quite a bit. There's a Sufi saying that goes something like, on their way to heaven, the saints are eaten up alive. And that's what happens when you embrace your own divinity, or when I've embraced my divinity. It's not been a blissful, heavenly, totally harmonious experience. It has been work. There's no difference between the spiritual universe and the physical universe when it comes to what it takes to live with purpose and with a sense of participative service for a much larger purpose than one's individual life, if you get my drift.
Mm-hmm. So when we experience challenges, can they be part of our learning or our soul growth?
Oh, of course. They are. They are the crucible upon which the spirit is forged. They are indispensable allies in propelling us forward to embrace the sanctity of our true self, the divinity that is within. And it requires a death of the ego mind, a death of that, little resistant, oppositionally defiant brat that is screaming out for control. My experience has been that the human craving for control and approval is at the root of all of our pollution of mind, which is even more of a problem than the pollution of the environment. Faulty thinking is behind all of our addictive tendencies, as well as our greed and need to be more important than a blade of grass. And in a shamanic worldview, we are all equals, from the most infinitesimally small microbe or bacteria to the most noble and sublime supernova. We are all part of this continuum, and we are a relationship. They are all our relations. So once we can live knowing that, life becomes wu wei, as they say in Taoism, a path of least resistance, and great relief happens. That's when you stop, fighting and telling Great Spirit what to do, rather than just stilling your oneself and communing with Great Spirit, and then offering a gesture of gratitude for that communion, consecrating the ground that you're at, living in a sacred way with balance and love in your heart.
It sounds like if you recognize that you're growing, and there is a purpose to whatever the plan is, even though you might not be privy, it might help you move through it easier.
Yes, and transformation is simplicity, or simplicity is transformation. And doing whatever you can, adopting whatever sadhana, whatever spiritual practice, whatever attitude or state of consciousness that is necessary, that embraces the impermanence of life, the ever shape-shifting, transformative flow is much easier. You'll never need to swim against the current, for you allow the soul rather than the mind to have a place of primacy, a place of meaning. And soul is really an experience of awe, Rita, in my own life. That's the best way I could describe it. Soul is what you experience when you look into the eyes of a newborn child that has just emerged from the womb, and you connect at that level of experience, and you witness the miracle of this awakened being that has just come out of the womb of the mother. That connection is soul. The connection with our animal relatives, the connection with a majestic sunset or sunrise at a sacred landscape destination on a pilgrimage. These are very moving, vital, stirring experiences that engage, evoke a soul approach to living. It's a feeling path rather than a thinking path, and hence it makes life much easier and full of beauty, bliss, and grace.
It seems that for a lot of people, it's just a very challenging path to live. Not that they necessarily wouldn't want to live it, but because of the constraints that our society imposes on us. You know, you have to go to work every day, you know, and there are these things that I'm going to say we're required to do that seems like it would interfere with someone from fully living that way, unless they made some really hard choices to get out of that pattern.
Right. And, you know, all the more credit we should give people who live in the modern Western industrialized world, especially with the rampant technological innovation that is constantly distracting us in a positive as well as sometimes not so supportive nature. We are bombarded by stimuli. So a person who is able to cultivate a connection with the sacred dimension of life in the middle of taking care of their obligations as parent, as worker, as employer or employee, earning right livelihood as they may, yet always finds the time to, for brief moments, connect with something that is deeper. Like, even if you wake up every morning and the first thing you do before you jump out of bed is just open up to your connection to a spiritual universe, to a sacred reality, and thank that sacred reality for providing you with whatever events and lessons and teachings you may encounter during the day. And begin your day that way, in that simple fashion. You don't need to get on your knees and pray and with any particular religious orientation. This is about connecting with Great Spirit in an open, organic manner. And then at the end of your day, offer a thought or a word of gratitude to that same source for all of the lessons that were provided, be them comforting or very disturbing. They are still our teachers. So you bookend your waking consciousness with a connection to a spiritual reality, to the sacred, and you end it with that same connection. As long as you do this, you can move through life, no matter how distracting the stimuli are from living in a developed nation such as the United States, and still find the inner sanctuary that is necessary to live with love in your thoughts, words, and actions. And that's what it's about in my humble experience.
But I like that. I mean, one, what you're suggesting is very simple, but I like the part, especially about the waking up and opening yourself up to whatever you're going to receive that day. It just seems like it sets the intention for the day, for you to receive whatever that is going to be, that unknown quality, that unknown factor, both good or bad. And I don't know, I just like that.
It works. You like it because there's an inherent reasoning and a sacred logic to it, Rita. I have a saying that is like, when we surrender the need to figure it all out and cultivate the ability to let it all in, then our earth walk becomes a sacred dance of healing service on the planet. More than the world needs saving, it needs loving. Hence, if you go ahead and begin your day with an understanding that you are an integral part of a vast, living, soul-infused universe that is sacred in every respect, and end your day with that same consciousness, you're walking with intentional, universal awareness and loving realization upon this good earth. And you will find yourself called by many, many sublime unseen allies and spirit helpers that will visit you in your dreaming. In the shamanic walk that we practice as Pachacuti Mesa carriers, which is the cross-cultural shamanic lineage that I originated and share the world over, we have an understanding that when our sleeping dream, our daydream, or our reverie, and our waking dream all become one and the same, meaning that the elements in your sleeping dream show up in your waking dream, and in your visioning or imaginings of your reverie, of your daydreaming, those same elements, there's no difference. That's the supreme medicine. That's when you are living your medicine. And I'm sure you know, being a medical intuitive and a healer, that oftentimes when you're confronted with a difficult client or patient that you need to be of service to, you may dream the best approach and then be able to see that the minute they come into your healing space, that they're already living out what you dreamt. At that point, you know that all you need to do is just hold space for them, that the actual medicine is already taking place, and turn over the outcome of whatever healing service you've done to the same source that provided you with that dream and orchestrated that connection that was so wholesome, and they will follow what is necessary for their own soul's progression without you needing to fret whether you did a good job or not. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. But, I will say I'm not a dreamer. I know I dream, but I don't remember them, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. But I find it very interesting in, what you're saying, in my healing space, my clients will be like, or I'll get a phone call. It's like, well, what do you do? It's like, stuff. I do stuff. And then they'll be like, well, and so, you try to explain it. And I mean, basically it comes down to, I end up telling them, it's like, well, I just ask Spirit, what am I supposed to do for you? And they just tell me, and then I do it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I do. And some people can really hear that, and others, not so much. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I want to shift gears here a little bit.
Please.
But we're talking to Don Oscar Miro-Quesada about his book, Lessons in Courage. One of the things, you're talking about, and my word is setting intention for the day and then basically enveloping that with gratitude, which is also setting a different kind of intention. But it seems that in many indigenous cultures, there is a deep reverence or a deep calling for ritual. And I'm just wondering, in your opinion and based on your study, why is ritual so important? I mean, even setting an intention, to me, is a form of ritual.
Ritual begets relationship. Let's start here. I'd like to answer this question in this manner. If consciousness is a priori, meaning it exists before the material world, would you say yes to that, Rita? That awareness or consciousness is a priori, or
yes,
gives form to the world, right? And let's say that language begets reality. Let's say the words you use, the language you speak, the way you express yourself creates the reality that you have. So you have the material world and you have the reality of that material world just by your awareness and through the language you use. Are we together so far?
So far.
Good. The third principle is that ritual begets relationship. So knowing the power of an open, expanded consciousness and knowing that the words that you use can evoke from within a reality that will honor that consciousness. The minute you ritualize that experience, meaning you order it, you give it expression with pattern, with pulse, tonality, cycle, rhythm, with sound, with breath, with offerings of aromatic waters and incenses, and with the creation of a ceremonial altar ground, you are creating a mirror of nature. You are creating a mirror of the above and the below. And hence, that ritual leads to relationship. And even at the more evolutionary or biological levels, all species have their mating rituals, have their caretaking rituals for their offspring, have rituals of nesting, have rituals of migration that follow very specific patterns according to the geomagnetic fields of the planet. All of these are core ritual behaviors that lead to the strengthening and sustenance of relationships that are evolutionary and vital to the survival of that species. So without some sort of ritualized action, really our relationships become very fragmented. In our relationship with ourselves, we each have a ritual of what we do when we get up in the morning, whether you brush your teeth and wash your face before you put on your socks, your underwear, and your pants and shirt, or whether it's the other way around. It works for you. It provides you order, balance, and it gives you some sense of management of an otherwise very fragmented reality. A small ritual like that develops your relationship not only with your home and with your lifestyle, but also prepares you to be prepared in your engaging others afterward. So these are very simple examples of the importance of ritual. Now, when it comes to mastering ritual for healing purposes within a shamanic context, it is an art, a true refinement that involves keen observation, much patience, and most important, timing, knowing how to line things up at the right moment to release their power for change for an individual or a community or the planet as a whole. I know that that's a mouthful that I've just spoken, but that's what I was led to share regarding ritual.
I think it's interesting that you used, and I'm going to call it innate behaviors, of animals, but called them, their rituals, because it seems like there are, and then you made the parallel with brushing our teeth, but it seems like there were a lot of things that were rituals to people back in the day, that have been totally lost and dropped or have become so superficial, I guess is the word I want to use, that they really have no meaning.
Exactly. And on top of being superficial and lacking meaning, they're not done within the context of a community. They are done only for individual purposes or for institutional purposes. So institutional rituals became, religious duties, dogmatic behavioral approaches rather than true communions, consecrations, compositions, connections, and cooperations with the spiritual universe. And that's why there's such a resurgence of the shamanic arts globally right now, because it's one of these paths that intuitively lead you to a participation, restoring sacred trust between humankind and the natural world. And, learning, realizing that spending time out in the with the raw forces of nature, what we call encantos, is the best university, the best college that you could ever have. And what you observe in nature, if you can, artfully and intuitively adapt those things you see in nature, the patterns, the movements of the natural world, in your own life, harmony is given great birth, and your example will be an inspiration to many.
But I like your comment about it's become an individual act and not an act of community. I mean, it just makes intuitive sense to me that if you are doing something as part of community, that you're going to have the combined power of all of the people working and acting in participation with each other, creating a much more higher vibration, a much more higher effect of whatever is going on.
Precisely. And that was what our ancient civilizations were so tuned into doing. Not all of them. We don't want to, buy into the BPI or the BPM, the beautiful people myth, because many ancestral indigenous cultures and peoples, were very warring and not too pleasant to be around. Yet they're, for the most part, the original peoples of this planet, small-scale tribal, nomadic, or migratory peoples, needed to focus all of their life force upon community sustenance and community engagement and participation, as you say. So, to borrow a term coined by Rupert Sheldrake, morphogenic fields or morphic resonance, when rituals or ceremonies or behaviors are enacted collectively, and especially those that have a sacred purpose, a purpose of opening up one's heart relationship to the unseen world, to the powers and forces of nature as well, a field of transformation with enormous power to shift consciousness on a global scale can occur. And I am very optimistic that there are sufficient people tuning into this, getting hip about this, and that a morphic field that is global, that is planetary, is being gestated. Teilhard de Chardin terms that the noosphere. In the Vedas, it is called the Akasha, or the field of ether, where every thought, word, action, and activity imparted by a human is recorded in this field. Jung would call it the collective unconscious. Yet there's references to this global mind, this global consciousness that is the result of collective ceremonial or ritual action in the world.
Do you think that, I'm just going to say, back in the day, that's just the easiest way to say it, that they were able to interact or manipulate aspects of the physical world? And I can give a couple of examples, but I'll just start there.
Well, yeah, I'm going to say affirmative to that. I'm going to say yes. There were many arts and, sacred Gaian sciences that involved vibratory frequencies attained through harmonized human action that were able to, counteract gravitational forces and hence facilitate the building of great temples, as well as the ability to engage assistance from beyond this earth to help with these types of extraordinary, monumental building endeavors that you see ubiquitous in the world and that stand as testaments or testimonials to the advanced ceremonial skills of our ancestors. So I would say yes, there's ample evidence on this planet of that effect. Great moments of slumber befell the human race for various reasons, and right now we're in the process of rediscovering these ways. Although there have been luminaries and pioneers throughout history that had tuned in to this and unfortunately did not find their way to engage the political will as well as the financial support of those powers that be to bring us back into this awareness, this wisdom. On the contrary, they were often persecuted and often discredited.
So I have to tell you, Oscar, I knew I loved you, but I loved your answer even better. I was kind of obscure and you answered my question because I have the belief that our ancestors utilized ritual, and I haven't quite figured out exactly how, but to do stuff, that we can't do anymore because we don't get ritual. And you just basically said, yep, that's what they did. But I didn't even have to take you down that road. You just went right there. I'm like, oh, this is so good.
Well, I was born and raised and still travel to some of the most sacred landscape shrines, natural landscape shrines and temple sites of the world to reenact some of these ancestral rituals. And I have witnessed extraordinary things as a result of that.
Can you give an example?
Well, yes, I can. Well, once again, in the book, Lessons in Courage, Shamanic Peruvian shamanic wisdom for everyday life. There's a
available on Amazon.com. So
because if buying this book, and whoever buys it that is listening to this interview, please send a review, because all the funds received from the sale of this book go into safeguarding these traditions, these ritual arts that we're talking about through the Heart of the Healer Alliance. And also for the creation of a eco-spiritual world wisdom convergence habitat in the southeastern Amazon rainforest of Peru, where we can apprentice these Gaian arts and sciences with the right people, with the right critical mass, and effect change within the global consciousness of our humankind. And we've been doing this for a while, and I've witnessed some remarkable things, such as the levitation of ceremonial rattles from the ground, lifting in the air and shaking themselves, and hearing the medicine songs being sung. And this is without the influence or communion with any of our ancestral sacraments or plant spirits, as some people do. This is totally sober. And then also the emergence of leaves, branches, and flowers out of thin air, that were the precise medicines, botanical, remedies necessary to add to the brew that we were making to serve a community of lepers in Peru. And we were missing this, and we could not find this achote, this Bixa orellana, which is botanical name, anywhere. And this achote plant came out of this thin air. And also in the book, Rita, if you read, you'll see a similar experience that occurred when I was apprenticing with Don Celso, in which oranges happened, where we experienced invisibility, and where I also experienced this interdimensional bridge between worlds that allows the veil between the seen and unseen to vaporize. And Sixto Paz Wells, who was the founder of the Rama Mission, which is a UFO contactee group in Peru, the only one in the world that has scheduled sightings and that are advertised, and we've invited journalists from all over the world to attend to. And as told, through our psychographic communications, the appearance of motherships and crafts occur. And in one of these occasions, when I was out with a small group in the desert south of Lima with Sixto and a handful of others, this semicircle of very luminous light occurred on the desert floor. And this is where you're in the southern, the least rainfall in the world, driest desert. There's nothing around. And so 3 craft showed up and created this semicircle called a zendra, upon which Sixto, this brother of mine, the main contactee of this mission, walked through it and disappeared. And 6 hours passed. And after 6 hours, he came back out, and he had the beard growth of a month. And he was totally disheveled. He looked like he had been put through a washer and dryer and not even put on the heat of the dryer. And according to what he said, he had been transported. Now, this is sounding really, really strange, yet it's part of shamanic reality, believe it or not. He was transported to what he called the Crystal City, which is an artificial Earth-like village that is on Ganymede, which is Jupiter's largest moon, that is artificial atmosphered. And and basically settled and created by beings from Orion that left their constellation because of Rigel, their sun, getting too large, and the fear of their planet being vaporized because of it becoming a supernova. And they have been observing the Earth for many, many moons. So I'm taking a huge leap here by sharing this, and maybe turning some people off that would be listening to this out of interest in shamanism. Yet our ancient shamanic peoples walked hand in hand with our star relatives. And there's ample historical and archaeological evidence in the world that attests to that fact. Think of the Cachinas of the Hopi and Pueblo alone. So there you go. There's some answers to your questions.
Well, I was going to ask you about the sky people. We have a very diverse group of people that listen to this show. So, see, now I don't even have to ask that question anymore. Okay, and I'm looking at the clock. We have like 5 minutes, so I have to look at my little list to see if there's any, because I always have a list, and I want to pick the really good question. Well, I want to ask you this. Now, this is really kind of, it's on topic, but off topic. But you seem like the perfect person to ask this to, because I trust where you're coming from. But I've heard that individuals that work, that interact in more indigenous type cultural areas have more of a reference to this than I do, because I don't believe it. Okay. But anyway, I've had a number of clients that claim that they've been cursed, or their family's been cursed, or, someone's doing bad mojo on them or whatever. Is there a belief in your tradition that somebody can do that to somebody else? I personally don't believe it. I believe that we can do it to ourselves. I tell you, I put a curse on you, and now I put the curse on myself. But I don't believe that other people can have that level of control over extended periods of time.
Yeah, I would have to wholeheartedly agree with you, Rita, with your position on this. That said, there's an evolutionary and survival value in witchcraft, and that's understood anthropologically throughout the world. And if you put yourself in the mindset of an indigenous person who lives in a mythic reality that is full of the tales and the spirits and the inhabitants of these very shadowy realms, there's a lot of stuff out there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And in the kamasqa curandero tradition, we have the notion of the illnesses of God, which are our physical illnesses, such as the systemic debilitating illnesses of cancer, multiple sclerosis, diabetes, things like that, which are God's way of bringing us closer to a relationship with Creator. And then we have enfermedades de daño, or illnesses of harm, which are what you're referring to, which are the curses, which are the ill wills, which are the sustained envy and hatred toward another. And just like when you stand in line in a movie theater and you gaze into the back of a person's head that has their back to you, eventually that person's going to turn around, guaranteed. Okay, there's an actual physical fluid that comes through the eyes, and the other person can sense it. That same force, sustained in ill will or with a particular intent over a period of time, can affect the physical health of an individual or the psychological state of being of a person. But yet, like you say, it's sporadic. It cannot be maintained unless this person is so insane that they live their life just to hate you. if you get my drift, and to do wrong. So I would say that without a person's consent, yes, nobody has the power to harm you in any way if you do not accept that reality for yourself.
But that's the key, accepting that reality. You know, that somebody cursed me, so now I'm cursed, and now I have to walk around because I'm cursed. And
right. And so therefore there's very effective rituals to reverse that type of experience. And they must be used. One must use any tool that one has without, saying that this is absolute truth, but just that this is a tool. This is one way of reversing what you're experiencing. And it derives from this and this origin, Yet I'll use whatever is necessary to help a person feel liberation from the pollution of mind that is at the root of all these things. It's the drunken monkey.
Oscar, I just looked at the clock. I wish I had you on for both hours, but I don't.
I understand. This has been wonderful. Thank you. You're a very good interviewer. You let me speak a lot.
Yeah, but you're interesting, and I wanted to hear what you had to say, and you answered all the questions in the way that I wanted to hear them. So how much better could it be? So very quickly, if people want to get your book, Lessons in Courage, give out your webpage, all of that real good information very quickly because the music needs to roll.
www.heartofthehealer.org. That's heartofthehealer, all one word, .org. Lessons in Courage, Oscar Miro-Quesada and Bonnie Glasscoff, and Amazon.com. Please buy it, enjoy it, carry it with you, share it, pass it forward. Love you guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, you have a great evening. Happy holidays. And I hope we get to chat more because you're pretty cool. I like you.
I like you too, Rita. Any future programming, contact my good old Sarah Scarlett, please.
Okie doke. Sounds perfect. All right, I'm going to let you go because I know the music needs to be rolling right now, okay?
Much love. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
That's Don Oscar Miro-Quesada, his book Lessons in Courage, his webpage heartofthehealer.org. Next week, we have Jim Harold. We're going to be talking about Ghost Stories 2, the sequel. And so until next week, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio.